Welcome to The Uplift, where we are uplifting our lives, uplifting each other, and uplifting our communities together. Thank you for joining myself, Cy Herrera, and Tessa Savala here, two women, two attorneys, doing it our way, and inviting you here each week to share in on the stories, advice, and life lessons we've picked up along our journeys that keep us uplifted, and that will hopefully do the very same thing for you. Now buckle in and let's get ready to be uplifted.
For those of you new listening to us, I am born abroad to foreign parents and came to the United States as a kid. Cy's a Latina from the Midwest, and we've both had our challenges, both being fascinating experiences that have taught us a lot and brought us to this place. And I read this quote from the actress Keri Russell that she gave to Variety within the last few weeks. And it really hit home with me. And so I want to share it and talk about it today. Her quote is, "I just don't want to put up with people's bullshit anymore. I just want to work with professionals. I don't need any new best friends. I have great friends. I have a partner, but I just don't want to put up with people's bullshit anymore. Figure that shit out. Go do that on your own time. Don't bring it to work. I just want to work with professionals." I believe you and I have had this conversation on this exact topic dozens of times since we met almost 10 years ago, because it's recurring.
Yeah, I'm over here just snapping like, yes, right?
Right. Like, thank you for saying what all of us have been thinking.
Period.
Because it's even when you're out shopping at the grocery store and you get the grumpiest clerk when you're checking out, and they're just like kind of throwing things in a bag, and you can tell that they had a horrible day. But it's also like Keri Russell's quote, right? Like, figure that shit out. Go do that on your own time. Don't bring it to work. And I don't know if this is my Swedishness. I don't know if it is just my love of efficiency, but I strongly dislike when people bring their emotional stuff to work. It happens. I get it. And if it's unusual, then you're like, you find more empathy and sympathy for that person. Mm-hmm. But when it is like every single day, their drama is filling it up, and they're like gossiping at the office place, and they're stirring stuff up because that is more entertaining than actually getting the work done. I don't have patience for that anymore. Is it because we're getting older? Is it because we believe in professionalism? I don't know, but it gets me.
Yeah, well, I'm right there with you. And I think, to your question, is it us?
Is it us?
I think it has a lot to do with emotional maturity, right? Like you said, is it because we're getting older? No, because some people never grow up. They really don't. True. They're out here like Peter Pan, and they just refuse. And so I don't think it's that. I think that it truly is about emotional maturity, and I really want to talk about the word professionalism. Like she said, I want to work with professionals because, in my part of the world, in the nonprofit world, like professionalism has almost become a dirty word. And I know. Well, I hope
that does make. Oh my word! I might pass out. Why?
I really hope that it's not, universal. I really do, and I know that there are very, very professional nonprofits out there. But I have found that, nonprofit areas are a place where, this definitely can take hold. And it has a lot to do with the way that it's structured, from the beginning and through today. And especially smaller nonprofits, they can be very organic in a way that doesn't lend to professionalism all the time. So I want to ask you first and foremost, what is professionalism, Tessa? What is it? How do we know if we are professional or being professional or not?
I would say it's probably three-pronged. You're doing your job well, meaning you're meeting your professional goals for yourself and for whomever you may work for. It is also making sure you're treating everybody with kindness, and if you can't be kind, be polite. I will distinguish between the two, right? Like, I think politeness is just like the minimal standard, but kindness is the extra level. Yeah, and I'm also one of those people who I don't like the idea that when something is wrong, you have to be aggressive and you have to be mean and you have to be demeaning, because that is not helpful. It reminds me of that quote from Nietzsche about when you're fighting monsters, be careful not to become a monster yourself. Or, Michelle Obama's when they go low, we go high. Mm-hmm. But I think it's that balance, right, of treating people well, whether you like them or dislike them, whether you agree with them or disagree with them, just be respectful, because you would want that same respect given to you. Because we're not going to get along with everybody, and we're not going to agree with everybody, but we could all be decent human beings to each other.
Yeah, and that's the golden rule, which I just learned comes from Confucius. Didn't know, but
nice.
Yeah, the golden rule, right? And for me, professionalism, I think I would agree with you 100% in your assessment. The first and foremost thing is like, are you there doing what you've been hired to do? And professionalism is about the way that you operate in, work setting, in your career, what have you. And I think that's like question number one. You mentioned before that like people can get into a place where, they bring, I'm going to just say their baggage, right? And they bring their drama, into the workplace, and then they're gossiping, not doing the work. Or even if they are doing the work, but they're not doing it as well as they could be or should be, or they're impacting their customer experience, like you talked about with the bagger, right? Mm-hmm. I think it's, professionalism is really being about the job and the whole job, right? Like if your job is public facing, especially, then like there's a whole other layer of your demeanor and what energy you're offering in that space to the customer experience, So I think that's for me, first and foremost as well. And then, I've loved your distinctions between kindness, politeness. I think that needs to be on a shirt, so I wrote it down. But, I think, everybody expects some kindness in the workplace. On the opposite end of that, though, like I've also seen people get into the trap of I think Brene Brown calls it like the nice problem. Have you ever encountered this? Where people, like people are not nice in politics, I guess. But in some of these places, especially like helping, professions, people can become, what they call quote unquote nice or have a nice problem. But really, I think nice problem is just another phrase for like conflict avoidant is really what it is, right? Like people don't want to have to confront somebody about the fact that they're not doing their job well, they're not being professional, XYZ, whatever it might be. And so they just avoid it. And that person,
See, I don't, like as a person who considers herself kind mm-hmm. and nice, mm-hmm. I don't understand that, because you can still be nice and still be kind and still discuss issues that pop up as they normally do when you're working.
Yeah. Yeah, well, see, and I think that is another really interesting piece. So there's a really great article. I'll have to find the name of it to link to it maybe, but there's a really great article about what we're talking about today in the nonprofit space, where it talks about how like, yes, we are going through it as a society, right? Like we've gone through a lot. We're going through a lot. It's a lot. And people are people, of course, and people are peopling, and they're reacting in ways that people do. But it's like in some places, especially in nonprofits, from my experience, like there is a sense that we should almost be treating the people that are working with us, and by treating them, I mean like, there's this question about, well, mental health is important. Yes, of course it's important, right? And we care about the people we work with. Yes, of course we do. And where's the line? Where's the line of like between, employer, coworker, and, therapist, for example.
But also, I'm sorry, I'm flabbergasted by this idea that
I know.
I get it if your nonprofit is about mental health care, but if your nonprofit is about, if you're working for a museum that is a nonprofit, which I'm assuming most museums are, if you're working for an organization that cares for nature, if you there's so many nonprofits, I don't understand how every one of them can do all the things.
They can't. And that's my point exactly, is in any workplace. Like, a workplace cannot be your everything, period.
No.
It just can't be.
Your coworkers are not your friends.
Exactly. And I think that's another big piece of it, is like, no matter where you work, I see this in lots of different settings. Like, people get confused because they're at work for so long, and there are people who maybe are friendly to them. And then whenever like the drama begins, it's usually because people expect something more than what, in my opinion, that they should from their coworkers. Like, you shouldn't expect your coworker to, I don't know, anything. You shouldn't expect them to keep secrets. You shouldn't expect them, to lie for you. You shouldn't expect them to cover for you. You shouldn't expect them to do any of these things, because if you're being professional, then you don't have to worry about that, right?
Yeah. And this made me wonder, is the question actually deeper? Is it that because of our culture in the United States, where we work so much as a culture, and we don't believe in life outside, because, as I've mentioned in a previous podcast, that ridiculous Celsius energy drink commercial about I have 28 hours worth of work, and I have to do it in 24 hours. So I'm going to buy this, this beverage that I don't know what's in it. I don't want to know what's in it.
Nobody knows what's in it.
But also, it's like that mentality, and that being used as a marketing angle, that people should buy it because all we do is work, as opposed to living.
Yeah.
And that work is, an element of our living.
Yeah.
But in the United States, it's our entire identity. And I wonder if that's what it is. Like, because it is the entire identity. Is that what's causing all these problems, where everybody thinks their family, their team, their colleagues are their everything?
I think you're onto something. I mean, even with Keri's quote to begin with, like, I wrote down the first part of what you said, and then I was listening to the rest of what you said, and she talks about, like, I have a great partner. I have incredible friends. I don't need all of those other things. And just the fact that she said it in the same breath as this, I think, is very telling, because it really is that. I think it's when there's a gap and you don't have anyone else to fill it. That could be part of it, right? It could also be partly like, you've never, like, I think it's just a simple, like, you've never really, like, had to exercise different kinds of boundaries. So I know we've talked about this in the past, but, like, for me, I know that, like, me growing up, I didn't know what a boundary was, like, except for, like, maybe don't touch my body, strangers, like, but besides that, like, that I wasn't taught to, like, have emotional safety in boundaries. That was not a thing for me, So as an adult, I had to learn that, like, oh, I can't just go around giving everybody my, like, divided unconditional love, and, like, and allow them, to impact my safety. And when I say safety, it could be physical, but it could be mental and emotional, psychological safety, right? Like, all of these different things. And so, having to learn boundaries as an adult is very humbling, and also, like, tells me a lot. It taught me a lot about the fact that, like, boundaries are not an easy thing. They're kind of complex in that you have to know, like, first of all, like, who gets what boundary, and in what circumstances and when, and, like, how we talked about boundaries having like being like, what did we say? Like a moat or a fence, but like with a gate or a drawbridge, right? And it's like, my curandera told me, like, when you start doing boundaries in the beginning, like you only know one way. It's either like completely, it's like 1 or 0, on or off, like black or white, right? Like it's very clear cut because that's all that you know. So you're bound, like the first boundary you do is usually like a kind of like, nope, nothing, cutting people off type stuff. And I think that's really interesting because when you're at work, you can't do that. You can't, so you're challenged in a different way. So like if you're in a friend relationship and somebody, it really offends you and you just decide like, this is not healthy, you might just decide like, hey, we're not friends anymore. I'm not going to be talking to that person anymore. Right. And in a way that's like so lovely and simple.
It is, right?
But when you get into a working relationship, you don't get to choose the people that you work with. Right? Nope. Like somebody else is hiring all these people and they come and they go and you never know when that's going to happen, right? Like from one day to the next, you could be working with somebody on a project and the next day they're not there anymore, right? They moved to Virginia or whatever. Like you don't know what's going to happen. It's very unstable in those ways, but also like completely unpredictable because you don't know these people. Like you don't really know who they are. You know who they show you that they are in the workplace. And so having to work with people, right? Like, because most jobs are collaborative in one way or another. There's usually teams, there's usually some cross whatever, right? So if you're not working completely solo without, any public facing stuff, you're going to have to work with people that you don't choose. And I think that's where it gets really challenging because you don't get to just run away or like ghost them or, end the relationship or whatever. There's this kind of like artificial environment where you have to work with these people. So how are you going to do that in a healthy way?
That and communicating clearly. Right? Like, how do you communicate those boundaries in a way that will be received by the other person? And because you are going to probably have to continue to work with them on some level, how do you communicate that boundary in a way not only that is received, but doesn't leave any lingering personal resentment?
Not only that, but also that is professional. Yeah. Because like, this is such a tricky topic because, I've seen people take the words, of healthy relationships like boundaries and use them in a way to be unprofessional.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
So when people do that, it's like, it's counter, not counterintuitive, but it's counter to the purpose, right? So like, if you're trying to be professional, you want people to respect you. You can't be saying like, oh, well, my boundary is like, I don't do calls before noon or whatever. Like, right. That's not professional per se, unless you have a really good, medical reason. But for your boundaries to be reasonable, first of all, and then for them to be communicated well. And then you have a hierarchy, which we haven't even talked about, right? Like, how do you assert boundaries with your boss versus your subordinate, for example? Like, that's a whole other thing too.
Or what do you do when you realize your employer doesn't create an environment that honors or welcomes boundaries, right? Like, absolutely. I know I have had employers who did not see an end to communication when everybody left the office, right? Oh, yeah, to the point where it's like midnight, 2 a.m., 3 a.m., and like the calls and texts still coming. Wow. And granted, a lot of that is still politics, and politics is a manic environment.
Sure.
But still, I hope it gets better. I think it should get better. And, there are countries in this world that have now are starting to fine employers that contact employees for non-emergency reasons after normal business hours.
I think that's amazing.
I think that's fantastic, right? Like, there is nothing unless even if the building's on fire, unless you're the fire
station, honey.
Exactly, right? Like,
don't call me. I'll find out about
right. But think about like all the when we were finishing law school, the stories about partners who are like, you will stay here until 5 a.m. and finish this brief, and I don't care if you don't sleep kind of idea.
Yeah.
Not helpful, not a great boundary. And when that's what's at the top, how is anyone else underneath that hierarchy supposed to establish boundaries when there are no boundaries?
Well, see, now you're talking about culture, which I love.
Yeah.
Because, culture in the workplace is a very, very complicated, interesting thing. I mean, how do you think that culture is formulated? Like, how does it develop, in your opinion, in your experience? What have you seen?
I think you lead by example, and that there are clear sets of rules, and they don't have to be specific. They can be broad rules, and it's not black and white, but it's enough for people to take pause and realize there is a standard.
Yeah.
And I see the people who I'm working with, most of them following that standard. And I understand that that's the path of this organization. And I think so many employers dismiss that in that, I'm hiring a person to do this role. They're going to do that role. Don't care about anything else.
Yes.
And that's just setting everybody up for failure, right? Because then I think the employer kind of turns their eye on the chaos that could be ensuing. And I think anybody who's been in a chaotic work environment realizes it doesn't get better, right?
No, it only gets worse. Actually,
it spirals.
And that's why it's important, especially if you have a substantial influence on the culture somehow, or you can have substantial influence, that be minded, right? And that it be thoughtful, and that it be planned for, even, and that it be measured, because if we're not doing that piece, like if you're in charge, whether you're, a team lead, a director, a CEO, whatever you might be, like if you're anybody that's in leadership and you're not talking about culture or, or tracking it in some way, I think, you're really setting your organization up for failure in a lot of ways, because sure, there are times where people get together and there's just kind of kismet, or there's just this, common ground that people were attracted to the same organization or whatever. But unless you invest and make sure that culture is something that you're watching closely and being intentional about, it doesn't take much to destabilize a place.
And what works for you for establishing culture? Is it a handbook? Is it the people? Is it clear rules?
Well, what you said about standards, I think, is the most important lesson for me, because, I have seen these places where people want to be, again, overly nice, right? And as an attorney, the first thing that I did was okay, well, we got to have some standards because we're actually legally obligated to have some standards. And so my first step is making sure that we are setting ourselves up and we have a structure and a system. It has nothing to do with individual people. And that's one of the traps that I think organizations get into, is that they start looking at the individuals and they're like, but I don't want to disappoint Mary. Mary's such a nice person. I can't do that. I can't tell her she did something wrong. She's going to be offended, and, at the end of the day, like you said, when you have a standard, the reason why that word is so powerful is because a standard means it applies to everyone. Yep. Right. And so when you have a standard that applies to everyone, top down, everyone in between, and then you're modeling that, everybody adheres to the standard, right? That is the most powerful, visible thing, So for me, what I do in larger organizations is I always really look to what is the current state, assess who is modeling these values that we say that we have. How do they do that? What does that look like? And if there's any kind of chasm between who we want to be, who we say we are, and who we actually are, and how we actually behave, that's the gap that needs to be tended to. And it can look like lots of different things to try to redirect that cultural set. But for me, it's always been multimodal, I guess. Like I'm going to understand the people that are there. I'm going to understand the legal documents, the organizational documents, all of that good stuff. And there needs to be, modeling and accountability and all that good stuff as well. So for me, it's never one thing. What I know doesn't work is you can't just write something down in a handbook and believe that a culture is going to change.
Yeah. And for me, it is all the academic research points to we are bad at providing critical advice to people. People are bad at receiving critical advice. Mm-hmm. If you want something that is effective, efficient, and productive, you tell them all the great things they're doing because they will then repeat those great things. And then you smite out the things that are not great.
I like that. Yeah. And, that's the other part is I think there's just the conflict avoidance part of it all as well. I
but is it conflict avoidance, or is it that it is ineffective?
It is. Well, it's both. I think that, if you avoid conflict and you only tell people, what they want to hear, for example, okay, that could be helpful in helping boost them, right? But if there really are issues that need to be resolved, it makes me worried that people will sometimes just, like you said, people are bad at taking criticism. I won't say constructive criticism, it's just criticism, and we're bad at giving it as well, right? Mm-hmm. And so I agree with you in that you have to be able to encourage people and help them understand what their strengths are. And I 100% believe too that you can reassess someone's, place in their life. This is something that I do with nonprofit boards. And it's not confrontational. It's not conflict, really. It's that there is not necessarily the communication and clarity that is required to understand what's really going on and what needs to happen for us to have, the outcomes that we want. And so as an example, this is different than someone has, I don't know, gross misconduct or something like that. But
that does not apply to any of what we're discussing. Really.
Yeah. But
if they are a legal liability for you, this conversation does not apply.
Exactly that. But for example, I'm working with a board now who it's a very grassroots organization. They have an incredible mission. They're doing incredible work, and their ED is out there pounding the pavement all the time, doing the things. And the board is a working board, but the board, as boards turn over, the dynamics change, the group changes because of that. And even if people don't leave the board, people change. I think there's this Buddhist quote. It's something like, a man can never be in the same river twice, because when he goes back to this river, it's a different river and he's a different man. And, I think about that in terms of we're all going through different seasons in life, so last year, maybe I don't know, I don't know. I had so much more capacity for this board. And this year I have twin babies and they're infants. And I don't know, I'm taking care of my, mom now or something crazy. All kinds of things can change. You have different seasons in your life. And so literally just taking the time to really understand where people are and where they would fit best. For a board, it's a little different in that they don't have, this one role that they're hired to do and whatever. But with the board, it works out really nicely in that you can understand, okay, this is where this person is in their part of their life. This is what they can offer during this time. This is how it aligns with the overall goals of the organization.
And when you say working board, you mean volunteers?
Yes.
To the nonprofit. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Just wanted to clarify, as opposed to being paid by the organization for the board service.
Working volunteers, I guess. Unpaid working volunteers. Yeah.
Meaning that they have day jobs unrelated to their board service. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. But for smaller nonprofits, I mean, you see that a lot, really. I mean, the League of Women Voters is 100% volunteer based, which I find wild because they be out there doing stuff, you know, they're registering people to vote, and they make the, you know, the handbook and all of that good stuff, or the voter guide rather. So and so it depends on the situation. But at the end of the day, I think, like you said, not only noticing what people do that they're good at, but also like the right fit, right? Like if you're great at, I don't know, managing a team, but you're not so great at like menial everyday tasks, like you have to be in the right role, you know, to thrive. It's like the environment has to be correct in order for you to be successful as well.
Which makes me think maybe it's that the role of employers is to pay more attention to their needs of their employees.
Yes, needs and skills and changing priorities and changing kind of life seasons, you know, all of those things. Because I think, you know, when people think about an organization, they think of it, you know, what's the first thing some people say is like, show me the org chart. Who is everyone and what do they do? Right. And it's like, that would be cute if these weren't people. Like if we had robots doing, you know, like cog A goes to cog B, yes, this would make a lot of sense. But for people, it's a little more complicated, right? And so
a little more complicated, a lot more complicated.
Just a little. And it's, you know, I think of it as like a living organism, right? Like we're just made up of all of these different like pieces, and they all have to be healthy in order for the culture to be healthy. But therein lies that line of like, what is a healthy worker or healthy culture? Like, what do you think of when you think of the culture? Because we talked about kind of what professionalism is, right, in your definition, but what about a healthy culture overall? What does that mean for you?
That means mutual respect. That means paying attention when somebody does something outside their norm, right? I think most flaws or errors or things that employers want to correct are not because they intentionally did something to screw over their employer. Most likely it is reaction to something where they had bad information. And so it's more just about understanding and not reacting. Maybe that's it. Maybe the culture is being proactive about establishing your culture as opposed to being reactive and expecting people to read your mind.
Yeah. And
spoiler alert, people cannot read your mind.
In case you didn't know. But some people really think that they should be able to. Like, you should know. I hate when people say that. Well, you should know. Well, I don't. So
right. Like, I've never worked for your organization before. I do not know what your organization's reaction is.
Yeah. But I love the idea of like really paying attention to one another, because, you know, every organization is full of human people. And like I said, they're changing all the time. Their priorities might be changing, right? Their health might be changing. Their relationships might be changing. Their circumstances might be changing. Their priority, like there's so many different things, right? There's so many different things. And yeah, I feel like when there's so much work to be done, I guess, or there's this illusion that there's so much work to be done, maybe, that always falls by it seems like it falls by the wayside pretty easily, or like it might be some of the first things to do to fall to the wayside. So how do you recommend that people even like begin to make culture and, you know, really paying attention and having real understanding of one another? Like, how do they actually incorporate that into their business organizations? Because I feel like it's one thing to, you know, be able to say like, we should do this. It would be good if we did this. But it's such a challenge for people who, first of all, are stuck in their status quo, but second of all, might be like kind of operating from a place of, I don't know, scarcity or urgency or, you know, fear in some ways. So it's a general question, but I just wonder, like, if you have thoughts on where do you start to help people really like get in that place, into that space, or make it part of their regular workflow even?
I would start with one thing that really annoys me about a lot of businesses. And that is when they say, this is how it's always been done. I think we need to re-examine that, because I think oftentimes that leads to, say, one employee having 30 responsibilities and 29 of them should not be their responsibility. And I think a lot of organizations, especially in my experience with nonprofits, they are overworked without clear identities to their roles, and their roles overlap without any rational reason for that, which then creates my favorite word, inefficiencies. And when you duplicate roles, or you have people who are so overburdened, they can't actually do their work, right? When you can't expect some human to like continuously multitask, because then nothing is done appropriately, right? Like they need the opportunity to focus on what their actual role is. So I think it's, understanding what everybody's role is and seeing where the overlap is, and understanding whether or not it's because that's how it's always been done, or that's what works best for that employee, or what works best for that organization. And I think if we don't constantly kind of reevaluate it, I think it only gets worse. At least that's my experience inside organizations.
I was just going to ask more about your experience, because I feel like, all of us are going through life and career, and we all have our individual experiences that, that's mostly what people formulate their opinions on, right? And our opinions are kind of what formulates our, maybe I don't know about our values, but definitely our kind of take on how we should be operating in the world or navigating the world, right? So my question for you is, in your experiences, like in different workplace settings that you've been in, where have you seen like an incredibly good example of a place that like developed and maintained and was able to successfully maintain a healthy workplace culture? And how did they do it?
I think the best experience I had was with a boss who lived and breathed the culture, probably to the exclusion of her personal life. It was in a law firm. She was clear on when she entered the office. She was clear when she was leaving the office. She was clear that she had a life and she wasn't going to be bothered in the meantime, even though she was billing by the hour. And she had a level of professionalism, but also a level of kindness. And she would always thank everybody for the work that day when she left. And this was a large firm. And everyone she interacted with, she thanked them. And I was just like, wow. And it sometimes felt meaningless because maybe you had, a brief interaction with her that day. But it also meant something. And it's something that I have tried to emulate since, because I think it's important that people know that they're valued for their role. And if they don't feel and know that they're valued, why should they bother? Right?
Wow,
like there should be some reciprocity of appreciation.
Yeah. And just a simple thank you. I love that example, because it's like, it doesn't cost you anything. It's not something that we have to wait 5 years to have, it's just something that's available to everyone to be able to just practice that kindness. And it's good for the organization, the whole culture, like the whole group of people that are doing this work together. I love that.
And I also found that people were very loyal to her, right? Like nobody gossiped about her. Nobody told stories about her, because she was present. She paid attention to other people, and she was good at her job.
Yeah. And that integrity is important too.
Yes. As somebody who works in politics, I could say that is a very crucial element to professionalism.
Yeah. How do you, what are some of the things you've done as a professional that just have helped you? I know you said you borrowed this, this technique from this boss, which I love. I love, people inspiring other people to be good, to be doing good things. that are helpful for everyone. But what are some other things that you have adopted into your lifestyle or into your career where you can see how it makes an impact in the way that people treat you? So one of the things that I think we've talked about before that I love about you is that, having an incredible ability to do good work, but also having the ability to talk about it in a way with grace and kindness, right? That's not, arrogant. Like, I feel like this is a very tightrope to walk, especially as a woman. And I've always been struggling and challenged by this. And so I'd love for you to talk more about that. Like, how do you do that? Where did you learn that? Like, what does that look like in a healthy workplace environment?
I have started with two things in my mind from the beginning when I started working. I started with, and I think I learned this from a professor at law school. One, have no expectations about other people. Do not expect them to do what you would do in a situation. And the other is to watch, learn, and inquire about everybody you work with to figure out what you see are their best skills, and then ask them what they think are their best skills. And usually the sweet spot is somewhere in between the two, right? In between what you think is best that they're doing and what they think they're best doing. And when it's that kind of reciprocity where everybody feels like they have some buy-in because it's either because they excel at it or because they're happy because their boss recognizes it in them, you find that balance. And was very hard at the beginning to let go of my expectations of how I would accomplish something.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
how did you get there? Let's talk about that.
I just
when you were talking about that part of never expecting people to do things the way that you did, I was like, oh, that's my mistake number one. My mistake all along.
I learned to keep my mouth shut. I did not say anything. I let them figure out what worked for them. Mm-hmm. I provided input on how I would do it, but I didn't make them do it the way I would do it. Mm-hmm. If they chose to implement parts of it, they chose to implement parts of it. And I think that helped a lot. There were times where maybe I felt like I had to do a little bit more of their work, but I never told them I was doing their work. I just needed the information. And so I didn't put that on them. I put that on me because that was my needs on how to handle a situation. And
I love that. Yeah.
I will say that it was very challenging at times. It took a lot more time at the beginning, but then once everything got up and running and rolling with new staff, especially in politics where staff turns over very frequently, it made for a much happier office environment. It made for a much happier and efficient work environment. Mm-hmm. And it all worked out. Yeah, I think that's it. Knowing that it'll all work out.
Keeping that uplift mindset. I love it.
Yeah. And from the beginning, and I think it's because since I started my professional working life, I have had the opinion that I should leave every environment and every person in a better situation than I found them. And
what do you call that? Campsite rules, right?
Campsite rules, yes. And I do that, I think, because I did not receive that for the majority of my life from people. And that's why I wanted to do that, because I thought everybody deserved the thought that I would see their highest and best use, right? Like, I didn't want my expectations, my belief on how things should be done to be limits on them, because everybody is different and everybody has different limitations and different heights that they can reach. And I should be open to that because I wanted to be I wanted people to do the same for me. So that's what I did for them. And so far, so good. It has worked out. I will say that when you encounter people who have very little integrity, it creates a lot of challenges. But, I also keep a what not to do file. And so it's kind of like journaling.
Quietly taking notes.
Quietly taking notes when I encounter people who don't fit in my view of the world or use what I would consider their negative skill set and lead by their negative skill set. I just write it all down into my little what not to do. Yeah. And I find that, universal justice usually fixes it really quickly, especially in politics where it's like everybody knows everybody's business. Yeah.
Oh, that part too. I was thinking of also like, when you were saying like people acting from their negative skill set, I always think of it as like people are acting from their trauma. And, and this is where, it gets murky because I love psychology, as we know, and I studied psychology, as we know, and I'm very fascinated by human psychology. It's just a thing that I like to learn about. And so when I see somebody acting that way, it almost fascinates me to the point where I want to know more, but I'm like, wait a minute, this is not my job, So I've had to tell myself and others that I love, like, oh, are they paying you as, a therapist? No? Okay, well then that's not your job.
I have noticed that that's where my what not to do file works, because when you keep copious notes, you realize that most of these people acting from their trauma or from their negative space, it's repetitive, it's cyclical. Like I know somebody who always gets in a really foul mood in October. And it's because that person is in an unhappy marriage and that's their wedding anniversary. And I know that October is a horrible month for that person. And so you learn to find those cycles and identify those patterns, at least mostly because I love math. And so I look for a lot of patterns. But it helps because you realize it's not really their professional identity. It is them crossing over in the Keri Russell quote of not taking care of their shit and doing it out on their own time. Because, they're not perfect. And while we would like everybody to take care of their own shit and not bring it to work, it happens.
It does happen. And this makes me curious about like if there's anything else that you do in those situations, because it sounds like you're saying when you see that manifesting in the workplace, you take notes, which I love because that helps your own sanity. I feel like it's just like such a good practice. Like me, I am more reactive and I feel like, that does not serve me. It would serve me best to like really be able to like see like, okay, this is a pattern for this person. This is first of all about this person and not about me. Right. Like that's another trap that people fall into all the time, especially when people are telling you it's you. It's hard to remember it's not about you.
Exactly. Because they might not know it, but it's not actually about you, even though they're saying it's about you.
Yeah. Projection is a whole thing.
Real.
It's real. And so my other question is just like, and what else? Like, what else do you do or what else have you found to be a helpful tool in your toolkit besides just writing notes for yourself and for your sanity, which I love that as one tool. Are there any other tools that you use when people are, I don't know, doing something that maybe would impact, like your project or your performance or I don't know, something that would be, a thing that you would have to intervene on in some way? Is that a thing that you've encountered?
Yes. And I will say I'm going to frame it as I passively aggressively lawyer them, which means that I take what they say and I spin it into something positive and I shoot it back out at them. And then they usually 90% of the time realize what I shot back at them in a positive way is actually what they wanted to do, but they didn't actually do.
Give me an example. Do you have one?
No, I can't think of one specifically right off the top of my head that doesn't reveal their identities.
Well, that's fair. But I love that. And I also even want to reframe the passive aggressive piece because yes, look, passive aggressiveness can be bad. Yes. But in the way that you're talking about it, I think it actually can be good. And I don't even want to, I want to frame it as like something else. Like it's like the uplift move because passive aggressiveness is usually means that like you harbor some kind of ill will towards somebody. And instead of like talking about it outright, you know, you give them attitude about something else. Like that's what I think of when I think of.
Oh, no, then I'm doing the exact opposite. I'm like,
correct.
I'm going to see the sunshine here, and I'm going to take what you said and turn your rainstorm into sunshine.
Yes, and that's called transmutation. That's an uplift transmutation, I would call it. Because
awesome.
You're not being aggressive. You're really not being aggressive. True. You're being responsive. Right. Mm-hmm. You're listening, yep. You're actively listening. You're seeing the person for what's really going on under the surface. And you're basically reflecting it back.
Yep. And I want them to end up in a better position than I found them. Correct. Because I want them to see that what they're doing actually has a good value, a good merit, and good for them. And we just have to use different words to talk about it.
Yeah. And that's not aggressiveness. I think that's like a kind reframe. Is what I would really.
And it works. I say a few years, it's probably like a decade ago, I decided to assume that everybody's intent was good and until they proved me otherwise. Mm-hmm. And that I assumed everything that people said was from a positive place. And it helps because most people are not thinking about you the way you're thinking about you. And when you stop, and when you force yourself, like I think I wore a rubber band around my wrist for a while, just like snap it whenever I wouldn't think about somebody in the positive way or when they said something, and it helps. And it helped seeing their actions or their words in a positive way as opposed to how I received them, which felt perhaps negative at times, helped. And repeating what I thought they said back in the positive way reinforced it and also took away any of my desire to be reactionary, right? When you translated it.
You just like mentioned it in passing because you're a master at this now. Obviously, you've been training for years. But I think breaking it down for us, you know, mere mortals, that piece that you said, I like clarifying, and that gives me affirmation. Like that piece is an incredible skill that most people do not have in my experience. And so I would say like that is something I want to just like underscore, highlight, and like cut and paste at the top of this because, you know, I always think like I love that you like have, you know, your ways of like training yourself, basically like rehabituating yourself. Right. Because I really think that that's really part of adulthood. Like we talked about emotional maturity, and it's like, if you are a child and you're reactionary, period. Like that's how children are. Like they don't have a skill set to like do anything other than that because they're just kind of like pure heart, pure emotion. And that's beautiful. That's who they are. And that's how they're supposed to be right then. Right. But as you grow up and you get into these complex relationships, especially in the workplace, you have to find a skill set too. So it's like very much like a science and an art. You know, like you have to be able to use your language skills in a way where you can get what you need from people without, you know, it going south. But it's also a little bit of a science of like the hard skill set, if you will. I hate the ideas of like, you know, hard and soft skills, but, you know, like this very much like practical thing to do, this utilitarian thing to do of like, hey, Tessa, when you said this, did you mean that? Mm-hmm. Or did you mean this other thing? Like even that is such a huge skill set instead of me being like, oh my God, can you believe what Tessa just said to me over there? And now I'm going to go tell, like, that's passive aggressive, right? Like I'm going to go tell my other girlfriend what you said. And like, and now I'm going to hate you secretly. Right. And that's going to, and I would come out in so many ways.
I usually say to a person, instead of saying, I hear you say this, and then repeat back to them, I usually frame it as, I just want clarity for myself. Well, I hear whatever, and then I'll say say their words in a positive format as opposed to putting it on them, because then I find that they get defensive. And this is probably my love of efficiency. I want to avoid that defensiveness. I just want to take it all on myself and say, this is what I'm hearing and my understanding.
I love that. I'm learning from the master. So let me clarify for my understanding. You're saying that you don't give people like two options. Like, are you saying this or do you mean that? You tell them like, here's the most positive way I can put what you just said into, and you tell them that thing and you ask them to affirm whether or not that's true. Is that right?
That is correct. And 99% of the time, they will want to affirm that, and then they will do that because they want to think of themselves as good and kind and cooperative and all those things. So this you kind of just...
We're going to have to teach a workshop on this one, Tessa. This is so good. So good. I love it. And I cannot wait to practice this. And I'm really good at reframing things in a positive light. I mean, this is kind of one of the things we just have in common, right? But I can do that for other people all day, every day. When it comes to like me, my performance, whatever, like, because I'm still, growing.
Yes, we are. When you know better, you do better.
Exactly. I feel like, growing up as a sensitive kid and all the things, like, I'm still that person. And like, if I think somebody is saying something bad about me, like, it can really throw me off my game and make me emotional in a way that is probably not incredibly rational. And so I love the idea of just like having this kind of forming this habit, forming this practice of every time I don't understand something, or even if I feel offended by something, let me frame it in the best light possible and ask the person, is this what you meant? Because if they say yes, like, my defenses are going to go down and I'm going to be happy, healthy again.
Right. And they're going to see themselves in a better light.
Yes.
And it's like a win-win. And I'm thinking about this as you tell it back to me. And I think, granted, politics made me better at this, but I think it stems from childhood and having a very reactionary father whose emotions were and still are that of, say, a 3-year-old. Petulant, narcissistic, angry. Yeah.
It's emotional maturity. There's an emotional age, not real age.
Yes. And in a contrast, I had a mother who always said, do not allow other people to have power over you. And so I think as a kid, I learned how to use her tactics against my father to get what I want without triggering him. So maybe it was me, it was probably a social experiment as a young kid, tiptoeing around him and figuring it out. And I'm like, this could be very useful. And I think if I was a note taker back then, like I am now, that would have been a note.
Well, also because the truth is like, you're going to experience emotionally immature people no matter where you go. In my experience anyways. And
and they are a pain in the ass. Part of
yes. Well, I mean, no, like back to the quote, like, Keri was basically saying like, I don't want to work with assholes. I was going to ask you like, what is an asshole even really? But for me, it's people who are immature and unprofessional. Like there are people who are just mean, right? And I don't like them either. But in the workplace, like if you're emotionally immature and you can't handle, like this situation, you really shouldn't be in it because you're impacting everybody else negatively, or you should rise to the occasion, or we should all, be able to communicate in a way that like we don't tear each other down or maybe not even trigger people. Like, I mean, I love that you have found a way where like, you're not making excuses for people, which I think is another very important part of professionalism. Like we can't just pretend like things don't exist. That's just avoidance, which is not healthy. But if you can find a way to give people the opportunity and the motivation and the like literal, like you're handing them the opportunity to be good and kind and reframe in a positive way, and everybody walks away feeling better, that win-win, like, yeah, I love that. And I wonder if we could find a way to like build on this. I think that this is so, I love that it's so simple and so profound and so effective at the same time. Like, it is a powerhouse move. I'm really excited about
it. And thinking about what is unprofessional or the assholes out there, I think it's also those people who want to violate your privacy and violate your peace, right? Like, there was a long span of time when I worked in politics, like several years, where I did not wear a wedding ring. I did not and do not have pictures of my spouse in my office. I don't even have pictures of my pets. I have zero personal pictures, and I've never had personal pictures, mostly because I protect it, and I don't want, especially in politics, I don't want anyone to know anything about it. Like, I think my spouse has met one person who works in politics, two people.
Wow.
Out of the hundreds and hundreds that I've interacted, thousands I've interacted with over the years. And for me, that's important, right? And I think that's my way of being professional, because I do not bring my personal life at all into that situation. And I probably still would, to this day, would not wear a wedding ring. But then I was just like, fuck these people when I started working for myself. And I'm like, now my standard is, if you ask me about my personal life, you ask me about my spouse, I'm not going to answer your question.
Yeah. Actually, I'd love for you to talk about that too, because, and just to illustrate it, because, one of the things I wanted to bring up was back around to identity. You talked about how, work and workplaces and career can be so entrenched, especially here in the US, that we believe ourselves to literally be our work, right? Like, that's our identity. But also, I feel like there's this other interesting thing, like, that I've experienced where, like I said, if you're not good with boundaries and you're thrown into a workplace, then it becomes very complicated, because people will ask you things. And this is such like a, very small practical example, but you brought it up, and I would love to hear like how you actually do not answer people's questions, because with all of the norms, societal norms that are out there, or maybe even your familiar norms, like if you came from a family who had no boundaries and no privacy, and everything was like, hey, tell me what you were doing, or what did they say, or whatever. Like, I feel like when you're thrown into a workplace, like, you don't know what a healthy boundary looks like. You don't know what the practice of maintaining something private for yourself even looks like. So I would love for you to even talk about, like, if somebody did ask you about your spouse or asked you about something in your private life that you didn't want to answer, what do you do? Like, literally, what do you say instead of telling them that information?
I answer the question I want to answer as opposed to the question they asked.
I'm going to pretend you asked me this.
Typical lawyering, you're just going to answer what you want and not what the question that you were asked. But also, you could use misdirection, right? Say you're at a lunch or a dinner and somebody asks something that I would find inappropriate. I'm not going to call them out on it. I'm not going to mention it. I'm going to say, oh my, do you see what that person ordered over there? I wonder what that is. Or, some random question about anything for misdirection and changing the topic. If they bring it up again, it could be something vague. Sometimes I tell the story about when I first started working in politics, and I was at a group of women's like cocktail hour, which I have never attended since, because it was the most horrific event I've ever been to, and was told that it was immoral for me to marry someone who was not white as a Swedish person. And I was just like, what is happening? Lord.
This was in the US, right?
This was in Austin, Texas. Yes.
And this was in Austin, the blue dot of Texas?
The blue dot of Texas. And this person at the time worked for a Democrat. And this person now works for a Republican. This person, predictable. This person had a sibling who was in a relationship was somebody who also had a different skin tone as their sibling. Did not like that I was married to somebody with a different skin tone, and made it abundantly clear that it was immoral, should be illegal. And I'm just like, oh my God, what is wrong with you people? And I remember coming home, telling my spouse about it. And I said, we need to move back to San Francisco because Texas is hell.
You're like, no, this is Texas. No, you're like, pass.
Yeah. And I'm like, not only that, but this is Austin. You don't expect it.
Exactly.
You don't expect blatant racism. And since then, I'm like, nope, nobody gets to say that to me. Nobody gets to hold that over me. And nobody gets to have an opinion of who I am married to.
See that part, I love how you're framing it too, because I don't think that when people are oversharers like me, I'm generally an oversharer. I don't think that you ever have that frame of mind of like, until you get hurt, probably, right? About like having to protect the things that you love, because you just think like, oh, like everyone's a good person and the benefit of the doubt and all the things. And, you know, it sounds naive when you say it out loud, but the truth is like a lot of people operate that way, and they think that they're being nice. And that's why I have a big issue with the word nice in general. Like, I've been telling my sister, like, we're going to be redefining the word nice, or you're just not going to be nice anymore, according to your definition, because your definition of nice is like, woo, that is a whole different definition, right? But what I want to, you know, kind of take from this is like, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do.
Correct. And it's a boundary.
Yeah. And it's empowering, really. Like, I mean, it's really like you have power and agency in every situation. And even when people put on social pressure, because they do, they really do. Like they'll say something like, oh, well, you know, my partner is this, and that. Tell me about your partner. I mean, all of these little like tricks where like reciprocity is expected or whatever, like they're tricks for a reason, because it's not something that you want to do. You don't have enthusiastic consent, right? Correct. And so I think that just understanding that like just because somebody wants to know something about you or your family doesn't mean that they get to.
And just because somebody asks you a question doesn't mean you have to answer it.
Exactly. And I think that just that practical tip in itself is like, especially for folks who are like new to office politics, because, you know, Tessa, you actually work in real politics, but the rest of us, we have our office politics, we have our family politics, we have all the other types of politics, right?
Because it's everywhere.
It's everywhere. I used to say like, I never want to be involved in politics. And then one day I was like, oh, I guess it's in everything and every place.
It is, right? Because ultimately it's really psychology, right?
It really is. Yeah, it really is. It's human psychology, and it's like group mentality, group psychology, right? I mean, I think there's organizational psychology, right? Like it's the same thing. Yep. So just the fact of like, if somebody asks you a question, one of the things that I think is really helpful, or has been really helpful for me in my practices, you know, I've been doing more stillness in my daily practice, and having that stillness, I think, has really kind of shifted my nervous system, or it does on the days when I do it anyways, to where I'm not reacting in the ways that I used to. So like you talked about reacting as an organization. And again, like organizations to me are just, you know, living organisms full of a bunch of individual people, right? So if we're all at a place where our nervous system is on edge and we are anxious and, you know, like, I mean, just really kind of in that space where you're on the edge, like it's not going to take much to throw you over the edge, proverbially to your emotional, you know, state. And so one of the things I like to do is practice stillness in the mornings. And I've been trying to make it easy on myself and just practice like, you know, 5 minutes of breath work or whatever. And it really makes a difference, because then I can have the opportunity when something comes up for me, I'm more in tune with my body, and I can actually feel my feelings in terms of like what's coming up for me. Like, you like to joke, Tessa, that you know, are not in tune with your feelings, or however you like to put it, right? You're the cold Nordic woman, the queen of the Swedes, right? Like, but you really actually are in tune with yourself in a way that, like, I think is very rare, actually. Like when you talk about how, you know, when you were a child, you would notice like, oh, this person's very emotional right now, or this is making me, or like you talked about the time when you like knew that you were sitting near a violent person, right? And that's your intuition. So you're actually very in tune with your feelings. And you know, like when somebody asks you a question that you don't like, you know, you don't like it, and you know, you ain't going to answer it. And I love that, because a lot of times we get manipulated, I'm going to say, into doing things we don't want to do. And when we don't have that kind of sense of self and sense of stillness and sense of even like connection to our own emotional body, things can move so fast that you don't even realize what's happened.
Yeah.
You know? And so I just want to encourage folks, because it's been my experience that any form of stillness can maybe change your frequency, your energy, your, you know, kind of your homeostasis in a way that can stay with you all day and can actually impact some of these interactions where you don't want people to have this information, and they can't throw you off your game because you're solid as a rock type thing.
You know, I wonder if that makes a good question for organizations, for the individuals in an organization, on whether or not they are good with stillness or quiet, or however they would like it. Because I would think then that the people who are comfortable with stillness and comfortable with silence are also the people who are not going to be volatile and reactionary.
You know, another reason I love this, I don't know if I already said this recently on the pod or off, but I heard about this study recently that said that the people who get the most accolades and the people who get the most promotions and all of the things are not the people who are good at their jobs, who are effective, who have integrity, who are all these good things. It's the people who are loudest about themselves.
Yep.
And that breaks my heart for so many reasons. But the main thing I took away from that is like, what kind of cultures are we cultivating where all someone has to do is be really loud and visible? And the people who are doing the hard work quietly are, you know, I don't want to say punished, but they are disadvantaged. Like, what kind of culture could we cultivate where the opposite is true, right?
As somebody who comes from a culture that thinks people who talk a lot are stupid, I am at a complete loss often in the United States when the loudest person is rewarded. And I think I think that happens in the United States mostly, where the loudest person gets the rewards, because the United States is a culture that tends to be extrinsically motivated, right? Like, how much I know, at least in politics, people talk about people's physical appearances, like their bodies, more than they talk about their substance or more than they talk about their style. And it is so fucking unnecessary and so fucking inappropriate.
Yes, completely inappropriate. And it's just also not the world that we want to live in, is it? Like,
no.
I mean,
and it's not proper manners anymore. Like, you don't talk about people's bodies ever.
No. Yeah, and it's just none of your business. Like,
no kidding. Right.
And like, and not only that, but like, why would you want to create again that culture, right? Like, the energy you're putting out is going to be absorbed into the culture. So just doing that is so, you know, I just think of it as like
gross.
It's gross. Like, I'm literally thinking about like the energy swirling around in front of me. I'm like, oh, don't touch me.
Right? Like, there are days when I make it to noon and I'm like, I need to take a shower because this feels disgusting.
You're like, please give me up.
And I've noticed that in my texting, I use the most used emoji lately has been the vomit emoji, because I'm just like, I'm so fed up with some of these people.
I feel you. It makes sense. And the other thing about this, I was watching a really good talk this morning, an Alan Watts talk. Are you familiar with Alan Watts?
I am not.
Oh, you got to look into him. I'm really obsessed with him lately, but he was very much like a scholar of like the East and West and all the religions in between and all the things. And he kind of like bridged that gap back in the like 60s and 70s. So it's like very hippy dippy, which I'm obsessed with too.
Love.
But he talked today about Japan mostly and their culture, which is just so perfect for where we're ending up speaking today on culture. And he talked about how so many people in the West, and again, this is like decades ago when he's talking about this, but he's like, it feels like so many people, or most people in the West, are just afraid of solitude.
It's so weird to be coming from Sweden.
Well, of course, I know. And that's my point is like, it is an incredibly different culture. And when he talked about Japan, he was like, look at these houses. He was like, first of all, like the minimalism of it all, right? Like he talked about like how that's so wildly different than the States and how, you know, the idea is to like the absence of things is part of the richness of it, basically. Like, you know, the Japanese gardens, especially the ones with just like sand and rock. He talked about that. And he talked about how like in their space, they have all the like sliding screen doors. And he was like, and this is to promote like, you know, privacy and solitude. And he was like, we don't really have a lot of that here in the United States. And, you know, this is all before social media. I can't imagine what he would say today. It's like we're literally broadcasting, you know, our every movement. And so I just found it really fascinating to think about like how, you know, culture not only shapes us, but also, you know, how we have to navigate the culture that is, especially for someone like you who's coming from a culture that's so different than this one, right? And having to like find your way within this culture. Can you talk a little bit about like how you did that? Did you have other struggles? Or did you just make your own kind of like safe haven and space? Like what were your tools that you picked up along the way?
I think I was a very precocious child, and I remember vividly walking through a school when I was in elementary school in wooden-soled clogs, because that just felt like what shoes I wanted to wear for the day, and getting all the looks. And I can still hear those clogs echoing through those, you know, linoleum floors. And it was just, and I realized that day that I didn't care what they thought about me. And I realized that I did not like the quick convenience culture that the United States offered, that it didn't make any sense to me, and the lack of connection to nature, generally speaking. And so I think I realized I can kind of assimilate by the way I look, but my mind and my culture will never assimilate. And then as I grew older, because Swedish is not a language that is spoken greatly in the United States, it took a lot of work to continue to speak it with my mom and a few relatives that weren't nearby. And then thankfully for like Netflix and the internet and learning that you can, it is now much easier to hold on to your culture than it ever was before. And I think it is so important for everybody to find their culture and cling to it, because it is informative of who you fundamentally are. And I think we all have one. And I think the U.S. does a very good job of trying to get people to get rid of their culture, whether it's, you know, people in the South who grew up in a very specific culture, or the Midwest and their specific culture. Like, I don't want people to forget about their cultures, because I think they give you the confidence to be who you are.
I love that. Beautiful. And I was going to say too, as you were speaking, it made me think about, how different of an experience that is for me, in that, you were born and grew up in this other culture, I guess I can say, this culture of another nation and people that you brought here with you. It was already in you. You knew it so well, right?
That and my mom did a really good job of making sure that all the family friends were Swedish or Norwegian. It meant the group was small, but they were there.
That's awesome. I love the intentionality. Again, how we talk about, the people you surround yourself with matters.
Yeah.
Right. And it changes, how you walk through the world, actually, and how you see yourself. Right. And I think you couldn't be more right in that, the US does a lot. It does the most, really, to try to strip people of their culture, of their heritage, of their customs, of all the things. We literally had, did they call them assimilation schools? I can't remember what they call them now, but I mean, we literally had these, schools that were meant to convert Native people out of their nativeness, out of their indigenous identity, right? And culture. And so, I've always felt very orphaned in a lot of different ways because of, all of the history of the United States and the many ways that it tries to do exactly what you're talking about. But when you were speaking, it also made me think about how, you said, everybody has one. I assume you mean everyone has one, culture that they can go back to and reference or what have you. But in my experience, I feel like being a person of all kinds of mixed descent, actually, I feel like I have way more than one, actually. And on top of that, I also feel like, there's obviously a culture that has grown here in the US. I feel like there's cultures of all kinds, so we can call it a culture, whether it be, good, bad, or in between. Yeah. And one of the things that I have found to be, like you said, very, very helpful in helping me feel like I can be myself is definitely learning more about, my culture, whether it be Chicana culture of the 60s and 70s, not that many years ago, right? Just, I think that, 10 and 20 years before I was born, there was a whole movement and culture that I relate to now, all the way back to re-indigenizing and trying to seek what I can and find what I can and connect with what I can with my indigenous roots and even my Spanish roots and everything else in between. And so all that to be said, I love this thought of you said it some way of your culture helps you to be yourself. I was thinking about it in what gives you permission to be the weirdo that you are.
Yes. Everybody should be that weirdo.
Yeah, because I think that's truly it. Everyone is weird, but we all try to pretend that we're not and that we're actually the same because reasons of, society and history and racism and all the things. But I think it's very that, I think no matter, what relationship you have to any heritage, I mean, even in the study of Buddhism, that is not my heritage. It's not something that comes, genetically or because I am from a country that, practices Buddhism, but just feeling seen, just connecting with something and the way that this, this practice and this, group of people think and their belief system and all of the things, there's just things that click for me that wouldn't necessarily be, something that my sister would relate to or my mother or whatever. It's not necessarily from my genealogy. It's just this is something that speaks to me and I'm trusting it and I'm learning more about it and I'm going where it takes me. And that's okay. I think that that's great. I think everybody should be seeking that. And, you can call it finding your people or your place or your tribe or, people have all kinds of different phrases for it. But at the end of the day, I feel like being a weirdo is the best.
It is the best.
You're not trying to be something you're not. Like, being weird means you're unique. Being weird means, you're just being yourself. You're being authentic. And so whatever speaks to you, like, I also think that there's so much value in that. And I mean, even the things that you share about your culture, it's like culture sharing. And, even though I'm not Swedish, as far as I know, like, so many things that you have shared with me from your culture, like, they resonate and they've changed me. And just knowing that there's a whole people that this is their way of life. I think it's such a beautiful thing to know different cultures. And I think that should be the way that America really, engages with culture. I wish that was actually our culture. I was thinking about the melting pot, like PR.
Right? Like, instead of melting pot, it should just be a soup where we see all the individual ingredients and we appreciate all the different individual ingredients.
Yes, and we can all live together, but we don't have to be somebody else to live together.
Yeah, and we don't have to assume that everybody thinks the same way we do.
We shouldn't. We should never do that.
I hope not.
And I think that's actually one of the big lessons from this talk today. We framed it in the workplace. Keri framed it for us in her work and professional life. But that's one of the things I think we can carry with us, is that we can go into the workplace and we can actually be our authentic selves without giving our entire selves away, right? Yes. We can keep some of it for ourselves, but we can show our authentic selves no matter where we go. Because I know, for me, I really thought for many years that I had to be somebody else in order to be accepted in the world of professionals. And, like, I say that now so plainly, but as I was going through it, I didn't think that. I just thought, like, oh, they wear their hair in a bob, I'm going to wear my hair in a bob. They were wearing skirt and suits, I'm going to do that. Like, just, like, you just want to belong. You just want to be seen as serious. You just want to be seen as somebody who has value in this space, And so I used to literally, like, I had like 2 profiles for everything, and 2, like, I really had like 2 identities. My favorite piece of art is this beautiful piece by Frida Kahlo called Dos Fridas, and shows her, in her 2 kind of like identities, as like European and then Native Indigenous to Mexico. And I relate to that so much because I always felt like I had to split them. But, from everything what we've talked about today, I feel like that's one of the things I'm carrying with me into my next chapter, is like, I get to be a whole person no matter where I go. And, I'm for the people that I'm for, and I'm not for the people who I'm not for. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah. And it's such a great life experience, right? To realize that is just, it is not only okay, but beautiful just to be who you are.
Yeah. And, in the workplace, like, if we really allow people to be who they are, be honest with us and each other, then, like we were talking about earlier, we're going to find all of the beauty in one another, and where, can benefit us and benefit the organization overall. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, I can't believe it, but it looks like we're coming around to an hour and a half.
Oh my, we've talked to everybody's ears off today.
But it was such a beautiful conversation. I'm really feeling that uplift feeling right now in a different way, actually, Tessa. I just want to reflect back to you that, I don't know. I feel this like centeredness and groundedness, I guess. And I think it's because we really talked about authenticity, and we were able to be, just kind of, I guess, vulnerable with each other. And it was just really beautiful for me. So thank you for this conversation.
Thank you for always being like the safest place in the world.
Oh, too sweet to me. Well, I love you, Tessa. I love all of you for listening. We hope that you have the same uplift feeling that we get from these conversations. And until next time, stay uplifted, y'all.